by Robin Levinson King. How Kentucky Bourbon Went from Boom to Bust. Tyrone Bowman Live. Let's talk about this morning. According to BBC News, or the British Broadcasting Corporation News, as American as apple pie, Kentucky Bourbon was booming after the last Great Recession ended. But as the economy has waned post-pandemic, and with multitude trade wars on the horizon, the market may be drying up. Although the whiskey, which is traditionally made with corn and aged in charred oak barrels, has roots going all the way back to the 18th century, it wasn't until 1964 that it became an iconic piece of Americana when Congress passed a law declaring it a, quote, distinctive product of the United States, end quote. But drinking trends come and go, and by the end of the 20th century, bourbon was considered a bit old-fashioned, pun intended. You often see these kinds of generational shifts where people don't want to drink what their parents drink, said Martin Lodowitz, the U.S. president of IWSR, which collects alcoholic beverage data and provides industry analysis. Then, as the world recovered from the 2008 recession, drinkers seemed to rediscover this classic spirit for a few different reasons. For starters, the price point was good, which made it attractive for bar managers to purchase and incorporate into cocktails and for younger drinkers to sample. Then in 2013, a law was passed in Kentucky that made it easier for companies to purchase and resell vintage bottles, opening up a high-end collectible market. Add to that the rise in mid-century nostalgia fueled by shows like Mad Men and Barbers due for a full-blown renaissance. Sales of bourbon grew by 7% worldwide between 2011 and 2020, which is more than 3 times the growth of the decade prior, according to industry data company ISWR. Soon, some bourbon distillers were becoming quasi-celebrities, and people were starting to buy up bourbon bottles not to drink, but as an investment. Everyone was going crazy over the bourbon market and treating like a commodity, like a stock, recalls Robin Wynn, a general manager and beverage director for Little Sister in Toronto, Canada, who has been a bar manager for about 25 years. People would go on in as a prospector to flip bottles for 2 to 3 bottles the value. But like most market bubbles, this one was bound to burst. The pandemic's lockdown tanked bar sales, and inflation has made many would-be bourbon drinkers choose less expensive options or forego drinking altogether. Amongst Gen Z, many 20-somethings are drinking less than their older siblings and parents did at their age. Those factors have contributed to declining alcohol sales, with bourbon sales specifically slowing down to just 2% between 2021 throughout 2024, according to ISWR. President Donald Trump's global tariffs have been the final straw. The EU has announced retaliatory tariffs against U.S. goods, including Kentucky bourbon and California wine, although implementation has been delayed for 6 months. Meanwhile, most provinces in Canada have stopped importing American alcoholic beverages. In retaliation, the country accounts for about 10% of Kentucky's $9 billion whiskey and bourbon business. And in EU term, it's $7 billion. That's worse than a tariff because it's literally taking your sales away, completely removing our products from the shelves. That's a very disproportionate response, Lawson Whitting, the CEO of Brown-Forman, which produces Jack Daniels, a Woodford Reserve, and Old Foster, said back in March when Canadian provinces announced their plan to stop buying U.S. booze. Trump has said that tariffs will boost made in American businesses. But Republican Senator Rand Paul, who represents Kentucky, said the tariffs would hurt local businesses and consumers in his home state. And I recently read an article about that as well. And I know a lot of folk don't like to hear about it, but it's true. Kentucky is suffering greatly. Kentucky, with its senators and all this type of stuff, is still one of the most poverty-stricken states in the union. And the business is down there suffering greatly, and the whiskey business is really suffering. Because if you depend upon export rather, for making the money that you need to keep your corporation afloat, then the taxation or tariffs, whatever you want to call them, that's all it is hurting you. And it's hurting your economy, and it's hurting the people that you employ. You either have to fire them, pull back, lay them off in order to save money. Well, tariffs are taxes. And when you put a tax on a business, it's always passed through as a cost. So there will be higher prices, he told ABC's This Week in May. These economic pressures have created a growing list of casualties. It is a stipulated fact. Billionaires will tell you differently because they're the ones that are making the money. They're not like the average everyday person. Their stocks and bonds and portfolios and investments and dividends, etc., and the guaranteed loans that they can get by the government if their corporation is in trouble. It's nothing but corporate welfare will help to keep them afloat. Meanwhile, everyday people like you and I, we bear the brunt, we pay the price, we deal with the suffrage and the everyday fallout from taxation without representation. Quote, close quote. Liquor giant Diageo reported that sales of Bullet, a Kentucky distillery that makes bourbon, rye, and whiskey, were down 7.3% this fiscal year. Wild Turkey, a Kentucky bourbon owned by Kamari, sales were down 8.1% over the past 6 months. While big international brands will likely be able to weather the storm, the sales hit has led to a growing list of casualties. In July, LMD Holdings filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, just 1 month after opening the Luca Moreno Distillery in Danville, Kentucky. Now, make it make sense, people. Why would you be filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to reorganize and protect your assets after 1 month of opening? Because your business has suffered greatly because of these policies. And you can't spin it any other way. That means they got to fire people. Shoot, oh, my bad. Lay folk off. It's still being fired. Got to let people go. Now people can't pay their mortgages. They can't pay the rent. They can't pay the electric, the gas bill. They can't pay tuition fees. They can't help their children with the projects that they have in schools. This affects everybody. Doesn't affect just one marginalized group of person. We all will become affected after a while. This spring, Garrard County Distilling went into receivership. And in January, Jack Daniels' parent company closed a barrel making plant in Kentucky. Now, Jack Daniels has been around since whiskey has been whiskey. Jack Daniels, they were making whiskey during slavery days, So that's the centuries old corporation. And you mean to tell me they had to close a barrel making plant in Kentucky? Now come on, y'all. I know my brothers and sisters down in Kentucky, they're fuming. They're angry. They are mad. Why? Because they're losing jobs. Regardless of what the color of our skin are, poverty is poverty. Lack is lack. Want is want. We need help. I'd be extraordinarily surprised if there weren't more bankruptcies and more consolidation, he said. In part, bourbon has become a victim of its own success. The rise in bourbon sales and the growth of the premium market helped fuel many small distilleries. Yes, it did. A lot of people were working. Life was LG. People were able to pay their bills. They would take care of their family. They would do some things. Probably, put some money in the bank. And what meager savings we all have, we got to live off of them. What credit cards people have, they got to use the credit cards to pay one bill after another. Then when we go to the store, the shop, we got to look for bargains all across the board, and everything is jacked up so high. You're like, what? I was just sitting here last week, and now this thing is cost 3 times more than what it was. Everybody's feeling the pain. I'm gonna tell you, politics is not my call. All many guys, my witness. If I was a politician, I'd fight like hell for my constituents. If my constituency is suffering, everybody in Congress is gonna hear my big mouth. Ain't nobody going nowhere until my people get help. The people I represent in the district. When I say my people, I'm talking about the constituents. Because if I'm a politician, I got to fight for those who put me in office. That's the bottom line. And if you're a coward, say you're a coward. If you got dirt and trash and filth in your closet that they're using against you and you're being blackmailed, then you need to be man enough or woman enough to call a goddamn press conference and fight. You don't take it laying down. Open your freaking mouth and fight for those who put you in office. Stop being a coward. Stop hiding behind your desk. Stop hiding behind the Capitol Police. Stop taking this conciliatory tone like you have a voice. Open up your darn mouth and speak up for them. Feel their pain. Know what they're identifying with and going through. Don't sit back and let your state suffer and you don't do nothing about it and you just read talking points that have been prepared for you by the opposition. Your people would respect you better if you stood up and fought for them. Even if you lose the battle, still get in the battle and fight. And this is real. Because bourbon must age in barrels for years. What's on the market today was predicted a few years ago, which means that there is currently an oversupply, which is driving down prices. While these economic conditions are harsh, Mr. Lodwidgic said that history has shown how tough times can create innovation. Scotch whiskey used to be fairly simple, a blend of middle-of-the-road tipples. When the sales declined in the second part of the 20th century, distillers started aging their excess bottles, which helped create the market we have now for premium aged Scotch whiskey. Well, how about this one? Remember during the age of Prohibition in America? When the government had that 12-year ban on alcohol and stuff, you know what they called it? Moonshine. Folks had their own homemade distilleries on their properties. And they were making their own, the reason why they call it moonshine, because they made it after the sun went down. They made it under the moonlight. And they were selling it all over the place. Speakeasies, the juke joints, all these places had plenty of wine and whiskey. How do you think Al Capone and them made so much money? And then when the government found out they couldn't stop it, Then they lifted prohibition so they could tax it and make money. Innovation of the mind is far greater than any policy. Put your minds together, and you'll be surprised how things will work out. So in Canada, where bourbon imports have slowed to a trickle, local distilleries have started experimenting with bourbon making methods to give Canadian whiskey a similar taste. Now see that? They're taking y'all ingenuity, creativity, and they're gonna make their own stuff now. Stuff that y'all taught them. And you know what? You must be able to get one up on them. Use that mind, you'll be surprised. Like as an independent journalist, a communicator and a broadcaster, a law student, I'm not sitting around waiting for nobody to give me a job. I created my own using the mind that God gave me. I'm not waiting for somebody to give me something. I'm making it happen for myself. And you can do the same. To my brothers and sisters down in Kentucky, y'all gonna bounce back. And you're gonna come up, and it's gonna be greater than ever. Keep your head up. I sincerely mean that. You know, they said in Canada, listen, the tariff war has really done a positive for the Canadian spirits business, noted Mr. Wynn. We've got lots of grains to make these whiskeys without having to rely on the states. Ain't there something? The Canadian Prime Minister made it abundantly clear to President Trump, we don't care about the tariffs. You tax us, we tax you. You stop us, we stop you. And when people start making their own stuff, guess what? They don't want your stuff anymore. All right, let's go to the comment section. What's your question? What's your question, Joe? Okay, but all right. Okay, Sarah, I agree with that. So can I ask you this, bro? All right, what's up? You got my attention. What's on your mind? So these are some of the reports I'm going to be bringing. I'm going to be bringing more reports to keep everybody informed as to what's happening and what's going on. You know, I have a different spin, a different perspective. So kindly subscribe to Tyrone Bowman Live. I appreciate it. All right, y'all, let me take a quick break and get ready for the next video. Never surrender. Never quit.